Pardesi Beats.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to Pardesi Beats Unplugged. Another week, another great episode coming your way. And today we have lots of random things to talk about. Gonna do a little bit of an interesting kind of just vibe check today and just kind of throw out some questions and just see how everyone kind of feels about them. And let me introduce to you first, Mr. M. Thudwall, joining us here in the yellow Bruins lumberjack shirt, you could say. And we also have Khushwant Singh in the studio, and also myself, Khushwant Singh. And yeah, boys, today it's gonna be an interesting one. But before we get into it, how you guys all doing?
Not bad.
Yeah, can't complain. Summer's in full swing. Lots of things to do in Edmonton, and the weather is nice. We don't get that a lot, so
yeah, it's still like heat wave stuff, which is pretty cool.
Yeah,
I'll take a heat. Yeah, I'll take a heat wave over minus 40 in the winter.
I won't.
That's true. You're allergic to the heat, so I can understand.
The heat doesn't bother me. It's this. I like a little bit cooler temperatures. Although I do have my moments where I do like being out in the sun.
I feel like plus 20 is like perfect, and then you shouldn't go too much higher than that. And then the bit of wind.
Yeah, there's been absolutely no wind, and the wind has been like hot, so that's
helpful.
It's just a pain in the butt because I got new grass outside, so I gotta like water it all day long, especially with this heat and the sun.
Oh yeah, true.
Not the nice.
Yeah, it's not gonna grow as well either.
Yeah,
but yeah, I guess that makes sense. You gotta be able to make sure now. It's a thirsty grass. Yeah. Even like I went to the mountains and it was pretty cool. Because like people might not know obviously, but there's a lot of forest fires like happening in BC, so that smoke was kind of like coming to Alberta and like in the mountains in like Banff area and Jasper area, like it's very visible. Like on my drive from Calgary to like Banff, you see all the mountains. It's like you're just getting excited, like, oh wow, mountains. You could barely see them because the smoke was so thick. And we decided to do like a morning like we left like at 3:30 a.m. like or started around there, this hike so we can catch the sunrise.
Too early.
Yeah, but it was cool because like.
But how much did you sleep before that? That's the real question.
Not enough, that's for sure. Like less than 2 hours. That was tough.
Yeah, I heard about your adventures.
Yeah, about me specifically doing stuff. But anyways, yeah, we got to the top and then like you couldn't see the sunrise actually because it was too smoky. So like normally you would just watch the sunrise over the horizon of like the mountains, but it didn't show. But we really lucked out. Like just before we left, the sun actually did show. It was a little bit above the mountain line, and it was like a bright pink sun. Like it was super gorgeous.
Did it look like a Star Wars scene from Tatooine?
It honestly, like it kind of did.
I was gonna say it reminded me of like those like the 70s like electro wave kind of vibe, but the Star Wars reference is probably more accurate.
Yeah, and I've like never really
when Luke is on Tatooine discovering himself.
Yeah, and then like I haven't seen it like that before.
Spoiler alert.
That was pretty cool. Yeah. Spoilers alert to like a 40-year-old movie.
Side note: this is not a real alcoholic beverage. I do not condone that. It's a birch beer.
Yeah, I have like the same thing in the fridge, but it's cane soda.
You should go get one.
It's too far now. It's too far. So anyways, I'm going to kind of get into it, guys. I have some random questions I picked out that I just wanted to kind of discuss today and kind of just see how you guys feel about them. So the first one I kind of wanted to jump into is, what do you guys like? Do you guys have a limit in terms of like comedy or your jokes or stand-up or something? Like, is there a barrier for you where something is too serious? Like, do you have boundaries or is everything fair play? So like, how do you guys feel about that?
Did you go on a date recently and have these questions asked to you? Just curious.
Yes, with you right now.
It's Kushi's 21 questions. That's what the episode will be called today.
Yeah.
I don't know if we can date. We're related, but okay.
We can.
Otherwise, maybe I would have considered it.
Not really approved, I guess.
No. Chalo.
Yeah.
Okay, Malik, you go first, then I'll jump in.
It's an interesting question. I think it depends on. I definitely do have lines that, like, if they're crossed, I would be like, yeah, we're not having this conversation. But if we're thinking of like comedians and like stand-up comedy, I feel like there's a little bit more leeway there. I can't like, but then again, there's also like jokes that are off color, and I'm like, not a fan of that stuff. So
yeah,
I can't think of anything specifically, but like, I would definitely say there's like lines, and then when they're crossed, I just shut down. But
yeah,
but what is that?
Depends on the context.
You don't. Okay.
I don't know, like, even like basic like basic human stuff. Like, don't joke about sexual assault. Don't joke about rape or like racism, like any of the isms, like homophobism, like stay away from them if you're. That's kind of like, I'm a pretty straight and narrow guy, so like
I think that's a societal adjustment that has started to happen. It should be in full swing at this point, but it's still people are adjusting to it. But yeah, like jokes like I can I jump in? Are you done?
Yeah.
Well, I'm asking Malik because I don't know if he was. I just kind of jumped in.
You gave the thumbs up.
But you know, the thing is, I think I'm the same way. I have more of a laid back person. I'll joke around about a lot of stuff, but with certain things that will hurt people, I won't joke about them. But sometimes there's a it's a gray area that some things that societally that are accepted or that I might think are funny might hurt certain people, or just things like that. And I think it's changed since we were younger. Like I grew up in the 80s, 90s, right? And certain jokes back then were funny, but now not so much, because you realized, you know, certain words hurt certain people and there's valid reasons behind it. And so I've changed over time with my jokes and my sort of what I think is funny and not. If somebody tells me a joke that I think has crossed the line and I know that person, I'll just be like, yo, are you stupid? Like, why are you saying that? And I'll tell them why. And they'll be like, you just chill. It's just a joke. I get that. Okay. If I know the person, I'll be like, yeah, okay. I get you're joking, but maybe not. But if it's somebody I don't know, I'll just be like, not going to talk to you now. Like, that was dumb. Right. However, at the same time, that's coming from somebody who makes the stupidest jokes, right? Like I'll make the dumbest jokes about the dumbest things.
As you've heard on the podcast before.
And but they're usually dad jokes. Okay.
Yeah, he does dad jokes, which is super
and I do
safe.
the worst, and I make sure they're dumb on purpose, and dumb being bad, like bad dad jokes, which are really good jokes. Let's just leave. You guys can.
I agree, but continue.
Continue in the comments if you guys agree or disagree. Like a bad joke is a
dad jokes, puns. Those are my bread and butter.
Little zingers, like little play on words with different things, right? I love that kind of stuff. That stuff that's generally funny, or you know, things that people find humorous. That guys like me and a couple of my good friends. I think you guys as well, more so Cushy. We'll laugh at the most left turn, sharp corner things like that which shouldn't be funny, or in moments like, okay, if somebody, and this could be serious, we don't know, and that's just it. If we don't know something serious or maybe means something to somebody, we might think it's funny. If we learn that, okay, maybe that wasn't something that person or that group found funny, then we might be like, oh crap, maybe okay, and then we'll adjust our thinking. But I'm not specifically speaking for him, but just me and my, you know, general group of friends that joke around with the same mindset. So I think that's sort of a long-winded answer, is like, I do find things sometimes cross the line, but more so as I've grown and learned.
So your answer kind of triggered something in my brain. I'm curious to hear Kushi's perspective on this too, because he has
to answer this too. But
but he's also like, so where my brain went, especially being a TV connoisseur, and Kushi also watches a lot of off-color cartoons sometimes, is like the representation. So I know as a big
black and white
fan,
cartoons, off-color. I know, I'm just messing with you. Some viewers don't understand them.
So with The Simpsons, recently they got rid of Apu. They recently replaced Dr. Hibbert's voice with a colored gentleman, which I think is very cool and very important. But like, from my perspective as like oh, Apu's on The Simpsons. I thought that was really cool. I'm like, oh, there's representation. It didn't really bother me that his voice was played as a stereotypical person by somebody that's not brown, but that's also kind of where my brain went. It's like we're adjusting as a society, but there's still a lot of gray area that we're
There,
learning.
yeah, and there's some things that I still like. I don't care. I'll say it. I don't think the Apu thing is a big deal. Being a brown person myself, growing up watching Simpsons, seeing a brown guy on there, right? Because you're not watching, like you're a kid watching Simpsons or somebody who doesn't really look past what they're watching. You don't realize there's a different actor playing them, a voice actor type of
Like,
thing.
I
Right?
remember two very distinct things in The Simpsons that I remember was Apu's wedding episode. I'm like, this is pretty cool. Like for people that don't know how Hindu weddings work, they were
Yeah.
going into detail. Another one is Homer went to India, which was a very funny episode, and they had like a classic Hindi song in the end where they all did a dance number to it. I'm like, this is great.
Bollywood song, yeah.
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 You know that's very valid. I remember when Apu had 8 kids. I remember that episode, and I was just like, holy! It was just funny. But that's sort of a stereotype that people of India always have like 30 kids each, right? Which explains the population. But
which explains our mom's side of the family.
yeah, well, our dad's side too. If you really want to, like
Well,
our whole
anyways,
family's pretty
yeah.
littered with. Anyways, the point is, the Apu character didn't bother me, generally speaking. But Kush, what about you?
I actually don't. So to me, that's just a representation of like the generation change. So like our generation, and then there's like the generation kind of beneath us, right? Like I feel like that's more so influence of their ideologies and like what kind of they stand for and what they believe in. So like because I think like we're all kind of like similar generation. You could say maybe you're a little bit before us,
Just tiny bit.
but like not even really.
Yeah.
So like yeah, I never had a problem with Apu. I think like when shows like that, like Simpsons, you have to always look at things in context and intent, right?
Yeah,
kind of. So like the intent was never to be like, oh yeah, look, like it's some racist thing we're doing because like, hey, we're showcasing this guy, he's funny, he talks like this. It really wasn't kind of about that. And like if you're talking about more like edgy comics or more adult rated comics, like South Park is a really good example of pushing like barriers and stuff. Because to them, they always like they just didn't like feed into this like, oh, you shouldn't do this because of this, right? Because like it just didn't make sense to them. So they always pushed boundaries. And like when I look at this question, like, is there anything too serious or anything off limits in terms of comedy or joking? I kind of went through phases, and my answer, there isn't for me right now. So originally, like, my early 20s, like I was into like everything very openly. Like I didn't really think about consequences of the jokes either. Racist jokes, ism jokes, whatever, right? Like I thought everything was pretty much fair game and funny. But then
can I ask you a question? Did you think, okay, so with the racist thing, and not calling you out, you don't have to answer it, but maybe I'll just say from my perspective, I feel like with certain jokes that are about different races, some of them I was sort of okay with hearing and existing because I felt like I was sort of a person of a different race when they happened. And so when people made racist jokes about, let's just say brown people, Indian people, in some aspects, I was kind of like, that's actually funny because that's true. And then some aspects, when it was being derogatory, I'd be like, hey, that's pushing it. That one's pushing it. But so there was like, I took part in my own culture's jokes about my culture. I mean, we all do it, right? But at the same time, like, Indian people are so cheap, things like that, right? But at the same time, it's like there's a line. So sorry to cut you off, but jump in there.
Well, I think that's like we kind of get like that because it's like you feel like your identity is being attacked if you don't relate to like the joke, right? It feels a little personal. Like it couldn't feel like that. And yeah, like I think I've had those thoughts too, but like kind of like jumping back into like my like I guess storyline of things, and then like after I kind of had like a transformational phase, faith spiritually, whatever the hell you want to say, and then like I kind of started to get a little bit more serious and empathetic about different things because you look into like somebody's struggle or like the black person's struggle, for example, and then like you hear these like jokes about black people, and you're like, this isn't funny because I know actually what XYZ kind of went through. They actually had to deal with this. Or a great example for us is Indigenous folks as well, right? Lots of passive jokes about Indigenous folks, or even just comments. But then you realize like, oh, these guys' quality of life has actually suffered because of a lot of certain things along the way, right? And it doesn't become a joke at that point, because you realize like, wow, there's a reality to this world, and it's not cool because this is somebody's lived reality where these situations are like
I
their
think
truth.
the indigenous culture jokes we unknowingly grew up hearing a lot of,
Yeah.
and I think those are the ones that bother me the most now. Being from somebody with a different culture and identity than the normal Canadian culture and identity of the 80s, let's just say, which was primarily European descendants. So I'm not going to say white people, because they might not be truly white, just a pure white, but descendants of Europeans and that sort of colonial thinking. Now seeing that, I lived with First Nations, Indigenous cultures, and seeing all these things, now you realize a lot. I guess it's a lot about the phases and cognitive place of where you're at in your life at certain times,
Yeah.
where certain jokes fly and certain jokes don't fly. And that's where I guess we're like, Kushi, me and you will know this, like we have somebody in our family and we would make the dumbest jokes, and then somebody would be like, Kushi, or what, and we know exactly who that is, and it's an elder in our family, but now we get it. But back then, maybe not so much, right?
Exactly, because their lived experience was different than us, and they saw a lot of
Yeah.
different things than we did. And then that's the thing now, right? Because like, so I kind of went to that serious phase, but I feel like I've transitioned back to where it's like, okay, anything's open game, but the difference now is that I also understand where I'm getting this from. Like, so the source is like a stand-up comedian like Kevin Hart. There's context there where it's like, this guy's a stand-up, he's there to do a certain job, he's gonna like purposely say these things, right? But like, also if you look at the work at that comedian, for example, Kevin Hart, and all the other work he's done, like community work, all these different things, trying to bridge gap amongst different folks, you can also see that there's no racist intent in some of the stuff that, like, what I mean? So like, I think there's trying to understand where you're getting that, like where that content's coming from, and also understanding that there's limitations to like people as well, right? So like, if people are going to make these jokes, like there's a limitation in what they understand and what they know. So what they say, yeah, I think it might be funny, but they want to understand there's like the perspective of like, oh, there's a struggle behind that joke, or so there's like a suffering. So I don't necessarily, so like I won't like feel bad about laughing or hearing those jokes. I'll kind of be like, yeah, that's funny, but I'll also be able to like check myself in a sense and be like, okay, yeah, but like don't forget, like don't like make that, don't get comfortable with that, right? Because we know that the reality is different for like people who are struggling. Essentially, a lot of jokes are based off like kind of like a stereotype of reality of some sort, right? So people kind of struggle with different things, and you have to remember that that still is existent. So it's careful, with kind of being careful.
I think the way you put it was good. Like, don't be comfortable with it, right? There's things that need to be challenged sometimes, and it's important to know the context and the intent behind certain things.
And also, yeah, like you were talking about Kevin Hart, like I think Russell Peters, speaking of racial jokes, right? Like Russell Peters is sort of I guess you can say, the guy who started making those really, really heavy and really, really prominent in sort of the comedian circles. Not saying others don't do it, but Russell Peters really hit at that. And he imitated Chinese people. He imitated our own Indian people, every culture. Well, he didn't stop at any, right? And he sort of hit every sort of general colored ethnicity with his jokes. General, I said. And so, having said that, I think, but the thing is, there's truth to his jokes. And whether you felt offended by them or not, they're coming from like actual sort of observation of cultures. And if you're ever a person who, I guess you can say a people watcher type of person who observes society and the way people and culture and groups behave, a lot of those jokes are actually just realities. But he's looking at the lighter side, perhaps making fun of
Perhaps
sides of
exaggerating
reality.
them just a little bit more for entertainment as well.
Yeah, but some of them aren't exaggerated, especially I don't like to speak on any other culture other than my own, but some of them aren't very exaggerated, right? Some of them are pretty spot on. And I think that's what makes it funny, because in those situations, I feel like, when Russell Peters jokes about, let's just say, Indian people, I laugh harder, because it's not just us Indian people or descendants of people of India. When I say that, sort of laughing and observing and remembering our own experiences, it's also other cultures watching along with us, and we're kind of at that time kind of more on the spot, on the beyond our culture sort of spectrum. But anyways,
yeah, like that's interesting too, because I find there's a relation amongst like persons of colors jokes, right? Like, so like if I hear a joke about like a black person or an Asian person or whatever, right? Like I like some people get like a little finicky, like they're like, oh, we shouldn't laugh, it's a different culture, or we're different race, ethnicity, or whatever, right? And I'm just like, why? It's like literally they have the same thing like we do in our culture or whatever. It's just told a little bit differently, right? Like to me, that kind of like, that's something, another thing that kind of just binds us together as like one human race.
See, to me, that just makes a deeper understanding that, like, I'll just say it because I don't care, this is my opinion, that colonial minded cultures in the colonial times were the only ones who were different and enforcing their differences on the rest of the world, which makes me sort of observe and wonder that most of the world cultures were very similar. Most of the world languages were set up similarly, other than maybe one or two. They all have feminine and masculine and tenses and things like that. Like Punjabi, for example, is very similar to French in a lot of ways, and things like that. So it makes you wonder.
Yeah, cool. So that was an interesting little conversation, little rabbit hole we went down. And so the next thing I kind of have for you guys.
Can I just add something before you add it?
Yeah.
These are great questions to ask on a date. So if you want to get to know somebody.
Why? Why does it have to be a date? Why can't I just get to know you guys better?
No, you can. I'm just saying for their listeners, if they want to use this for that purpose.
Yeah. And they can also hit me up too.
Yeah, Kushi's dating.
Especially if you want to date them.
Yeah,
Kushi's dating.
I'll sell you all the questions. Yeah. So anyways, cool. So that one was pretty interesting here. But then, so this one I like because I feel like we get some interesting answers out of us. And this one is, if you could be trained in any profession of your choice, obviously, by like the top level people of that profession, what are you going to choose? Like, what career path would you go down? And
it can't be something you're already in.
Yeah, so I think we'll start with you, but the one.
Yeah.
You didn't give me much time to think there.
Well, I started with Malik last time, so.
Honestly, like, if I could
I can go if you need to think.
Yeah, I kind of have the spectrum in mind, but I want to know how to put it into words. Since you came up with a question and clearly had time to think about it, I'll let you go first. I can definitely go second or third, no problem.
Okay, I'll go first. This one, like, to me is like pretty easy. I've always thought cricket is like one of the highest skill sports, which it is. You need so much finesse, so much timing, so much touch. You have to be in great physical shape. So I would probably learn to be trained by top level cricketers and try to make a career in cricket.
The cricket from Pinocchio is awesome. You can ask him if you want to be a really good cricket.
So cricket as in the sport.
Jiminy, yeah. Not Jiminy? No.
It is Jiminy.
No, not the Jiminy cricket. I need a top hat for that. But yeah, I think that would be what I do, because like there's like it's sports. I love sports.
Yeah.
And then B, it's like there's so many top level talent from every like country outside of like North America and South America on the other side of the globe. So there's so many great players that you can learn from. And yeah, I just think like cricket just seems like one of the best sports to play, because there's so many different stages. You play international, then you play your domestic, and then so it's a very diverse game in terms of like there's 3 different formats as well now. Yeah, and it just seems like it'd be really awesome to commit to that and live that kind of lifestyle.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Pat's still thinking. I can tell by his face, so I'll jump in. This question's super easy for me too. Similar to Kush. Like these. I have 2 answers because these are the first 2 that came to my head. For me, entertainment is a big thing. When I'm singing, I love stage performances. I love live performances. I love entertaining crowds and things like that, although I'm kind of a shy person. Um, for me, one of the first answers that came to my mind was professional wrestler,
Yeah.
right? And just like the aspect of that, right? Like,
Yeah.
you get to travel the world, you get to experience different crowds, cultures, and me and Kushi have a very weird obsession with wrestling as well. So that answer is pretty easy for me. The other one for me also is up with
what type of wrestler would you try to be though? Like, how would you classify yourself?
Pick one wrestler that you would model that you closely relate to, that you can kind of say, I would be like this wrestler.
Or who's the three top professionals that you would have train you? There you go.
Sure. Interesting. Well, so one of the very underrated characters of wrestling is going to a very weird rabbit hole that I really appreciated growing up was Muhammad Hassan. His character was very smart. He was American, but he was playing the anti-American. So I think as like we just talked about, like the cultural stereotypes in wrestling are so prominent, like Iron Sheik, Jinder Mahal, like all these guys had like that stereotype, but like that character for me was pretty cool because he's like, no, I'm American, like you guys are being dumb. But I don't know, like I like to watch certain types of wrestling, but if I were to be a wrestler, I'd probably be more of like a technical, like a Dean Malenko, or like more of a crisp Bret Hart, like more of a crisp wrestler versus the type of wrestling that I like to watch, which Kush knows is like the bloody, the blood.
Here's Mr. Socko.
Yeah, no, even worse than that. But
here's Mr. Cheese Grater.
Yeah, here's light bulb and pizza cutter. So
yeah,
damn, Mullet, you into some stuff, aren't you?
There's wrestling.
A lot of wrestling fans who like that. Yeah.
There's a lot of weird niches in wrestling. The other one, easy for me, is the other obsession that I have is hockey. Like to learn from like a Connor McDavid or to learn from an intelligent mind like that would be really cool.
Yeah, that's
like a PK Subban. Yeah.
I mean, as a defenseman, sure. I can agree with that. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Cool. Very interesting.
Pat still doesn't have an answer.
No, I have an answer. But my answer is more out of time. Like, here's the thing, right? The problem with me is just the way I work. I'm not stuck in this era and this time. So a lot of my answers would reflect being in a different time or different era, which is sort of weird. But I'll give you two answers. I'll give you one being in this time and era, and I'll give you another one. So if I could sort of pick, and I've done 2-3 different career brainstorms, I guess you can say, earlier in my young adult life, and then I went into one which was the least of my 3 top choices. But I did consider going to police. I did consider going into military. So one of them can kind of reflect the military side a little bit, but I think I'd love to be a pilot, and not like a Boeing 747 pilot. I'm talking like fighter jets type of pilot, or small aircraft pilot. And I think that really sort of came to me when I used to watch Star Wars as a kid, because I always wanted an X-Wing. I was like, having that kind of a small aircraft.
Be like Wedge?
Like Wedge Antilles, or like, Luke, or all those guys, like red one, and being in one of those would be so sick. And I think growing up watching, that was in elementary when I first watched Star Wars. I mean, I could have watched it before I was close to when I was born, but elementary is when it really started, ruminating with me. It's kind of like, yo, man, having an X-Wing, like having that smaller sort of aircraft where you feel like it's just an extension of you rather than something you're inside of, like a Boeing 747, like a big passenger aircraft, where you're controlling it and it's so nimble that it feels like it's an extension of you. Which there's a communication theorist named Marshall McLuhan who had a theory that the medium itself is the message, not the message inside of a medium. So in that sort of thought process, you yourself become the vehicle you're driving. Like if people are driving like idiots, it's usually because they're idiots, right? I mean, we all think that way, at least. So if I'm driving my truck, because I have a pickup truck, I feel like I am the pickup truck. And so with that same sort of thought process, because you're the brain, right? So, when you're in an X-Wing or some sort of small fighter jet, like, anything like that, I feel like you'd really feel like that's you flying. So something like that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, actually.
So that's
when I think about it, I feel like, that'd be like pretty badass.
I think we talked about this in our superhero episode. We talk about this in so many different ways, but which human doesn't want to fly? Like, we can all, as humans, we've sort of conquered the swimming side, the water side, if we want to, right? Scuba gear, submarines, but we've also now conquered the skies with jets and flying and things like that. And I feel like flying and seeing the world like that would be sick. And so that's
but also the sea is largely untapped also. So I don't know if I agree with your water comment, because that seems like a mystery.
No, I don't mean scary. That. I don't mean that we know the whole ocean.
Yeah.
I mean that we're able to, swim.
We can get down there and check it out.
We can get down to a certain extent
level,
for certain time periods with oxygen masks and stuff. Yeah. So that would also be cool, but I feel like I'd rather be in the sky than in the water. But and then
you don't have to dry off after necessarily.
Well, it depends on what altitude you're at if you actually really want to think about it, because there is a freezing level which will give you condensation.
And if you have a wetsuit, you're fine anyways.
You can wear a wetsuit and fly a plane. I mean, but also if I was out of time, I think I'd love to be like a ninja in ancient Japan. I might have to kill myself if I lose, because that's
samurai, dude.
No, that's samurai, but rogue samurais become ninjas.
Yeah.
And even ninjas.
That's interesting. Yeah. Like, I think both of mine and Kush's answers were like era specific to like present time, but it's cool to think about like what would you have been in like a different time. And I can't
something to do with like a Zen, like Buddhist sort of mindset, which we do have in our religion from my perspective. So I feel like I have that, but that whole art of being like a ninja, samurai ninja, I would say both, but more on the ninja side, because you're kind of in the shadows and you're not out there. So that'd be so cool. But
that would be cool.
That'd
be an interesting life. It's like, what do your day to day? It's just like, what do you do?
It's just Assassin's Creed in real life.
Yeah. I would be the Ninja Turtle ninja, because I'd be like Michelangelo. Like, I'd want to do some fun stuff.
Honestly, I was thinking
you just want to eat pizza.
Using that as an answer as well.
Reason.
Yeah. So maybe the Ninja Turtle.
Pizza.
There you go.
Okay, cool. Those are some interesting answers from you. I think ours were pretty standard.
I got many more options. I'd love to be this bottle of root beer. No, I'm just kidding. That's just bending I don't want to go into physics there. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, so this next one is this was interesting. So it's just like, do you guys feel like you know how you're gonna die? Like, do you have a hunch of like how you're gonna go, or maybe not if how, or like how you want to go?
Molly, can you put our psychic hotline number up here after?
Yeah. 1-800-KUSH.
Kush one.
Okay, so is it how you'd want to, or do you know how you would?
I think it's better if it's like, do you have a hunch how?
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll go first. No idea.
Good answer.
I have no idea. I've never really wanted to know. I never would want to know. And I think however it happens, whenever it happens, I don't want to know about it before. Simple. I'm not scared of it. It's just that I just don't want to know. If it's gonna happen, let it. If it's not, then whatever, right? I'm one of those type of people. Like, simple as that. So having said that, I don't even put my mind there, because the way we're sort of raised in our religion, not having, or being taught not to have a fear of death, mixed with my personal thoughts and things about life and death, I just, whatever, if and I believe in God. I'm not saying you have to as a viewer or listener, but whenever, in my opinion, whenever God wants to bestow that upon me, let him, but don't tell me before. Just do it, right?
I think you touch on an interesting point. It's like, if we know that's such a Pandora's box that we're opening. It's like, I know I have until this date and this is exactly how I'm gonna die. So like,
Yeah.
am I living my life or am I living my life knowing this outcome?
I think there's two ways to think about what you just said, because like, let's say you're in a situation where a doctor comes to you and says, you got this much time. I think that would be a different context, because that's sort of like, it becomes more than you at that point, and perhaps right, because then it's more about your family and loved ones and maybe things you got to sort out. But I still don't know if I personally would want to know. I know if it wasn't me answering this, somebody was answering it about me, they would probably want to know, because they'd want to be able to spend that time with that person or something. But I feel like if I knew, let's change that, the way I was phrasing it. I feel like I try to live in a way that if it happened suddenly, that I wouldn't have any regrets, or people wouldn't feel a lack of me, for a lack of better terms, right? Like, I try to be the straightest version of myself that I can be, all around, that it's not like, oh, we didn't know that about him, or, it's just like, okay, we knew him in his fullest. And I'm sure you both can attest to that. Like, I don't BS who I am. It doesn't matter what I'm doing. Like, I'm still who I am. Sure, I have to behave certain ways in certain situations, but I don't change who I am in those situations. So having said that, I personally would not want to know. I would just be like, hey, whatever. Simple.
Cool. Should I go, Malik, or okay, I'll go.
Yeah, you jump in.
Yeah. So like I feel like only reason I jumped to this conclusion of this is my hunch or how I will die is because I've always like dreamed about fighting in wars, like always, like since I was a young kid to even like sometimes now. It's just like I've always had dreams that theme around battles, me versus whatever, me in a team versus whomever. So it's pretty interesting. That consistent theme has always been in my head. Maybe it's because I think
played
about
a
that
lot
stuff
of Call
a
of
lot.
Duty.
I played a lot of different things, watched a lot of different things, Lord of the Rings, everything. Been always into like
Dragon Ball Z
war
and
movies,
stuff like that,
Black Hawk Down, Saving Private Ryan, like all those things, right?
Yeah.
Like fighting a battle, soldier stuff. But
So
that's how I feel like that's how I feel like I'll die. Like it might be in a battle, just a soldier on the field, playing the game. That is definitely a metaphor.
That's literally what it is. You're playing the game.
Yeah.
The game. We'll leave that for another conversation.
Yeah, exactly. Playing the game, and then just do whatever I can, do my part, and then that's it. Then I'm gone. That's how I feel like it could happen. Just because I think about that stuff a lot, or I dreamt about that stuff. I don't think about it, but like I've just dreamt about a lot of that stuff. So I just feel like, hey, maybe these are connected.
Could be.
And I'm similar to just what Pat said, is like I don't really give it much thought of like, if it happens, it happens. When it happens, I'm kind of very laid back in that sense. But one very odd thing about me is growing up, for the longest time, I had this theory in my head, and I was like, I'm not going to live past 30. It's like there's no rhyme or reason or thought process behind why I thought this way. I was like, I'm going to hit 30, and then like I can't predict or I can't see a future after 30. So in my head, I was like, well, I guess that's probably when I'm going to go. It wasn't like a fear of like, oh, I'm going to die. Like I didn't change it.
How old are you now?
Over 30 now. So that theory is disproved.
Debunked. Put a big debunk stamp on me.
In how old are you when you were thinking that?
I honestly, like, as long as I can remember, like since I was a kid.
Okay, so
I'm glad you didn't say you were 29 when you were thinking it.
Yeah,
maybe. So your 20-year plan or whatever didn't come to fruition. You have to write another 20-year plan at the age 30 now.
Which is not a bad thing, but I think to that point, to what Pat said, it's like death is inevitable, but if we kind of like sit there and stew about it and start overthinking about it, it becomes like unhealthy sometimes.
Sort of as a more of a little dark but very serious thing that I'm going to say is like that's sort of the only guaranteed thing that you have when you're born, is that one day you're going to be the opposite of born, right? So so at the end of the day, it's going to happen to everybody. how, when, and all those sort of things, and why, they're all sort of variables that I personally don't like to bother with, because it's going to happen anyways to everybody, right? So I personally don't really care, because if I spend too much time thinking about that, I feel like I will take away from time doing things on this planet.
Yeah, like, you'd start modeling like what you're doing and how you're doing it based on that outcome, rather
it gives
than,
you
like,
a
wanting
really
to live your
weird
life.
motive to do certain things or not. And I think that it's not a bad way to think. Like, there's a lot of quotes like live each day like it's the last and all that sort of stuff. And sure, that's fair. Maybe a lot of people should adopt that thinking, right? But, you know, at the same time, don't live in fear of that, so that you're stressed and full of anxiety. You're every day. Like, I suddenly did all my 30 years of financial planning in 2 hours. Like, I'm not going to do that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? So
Cushy has a weird look on his face, so I want to tag him in here and see what he's going to say.
Okay, so are you guys done giving your input on this? Okay. Here's how I don't want to die. Okay? I don't want to die to a damn snake biting me and poisoning me, and that's it. And for the longest time,
should I insert the Stone Cold meme right here? Just
yeah. For the longest time, I always thought like a snake's gonna bite me, and then that's how I'm gonna die, and it's gonna be the shittiest way to die.
Haven't you watched old school Punjabi movies? You just gotta find a wife who will suck the venom out.
Yeah. Yeah, or something like that. But anyways, I still do. I think like that's like the worst way to go out. It's like
snake bite.
Oh man, what can I do right now?
So the moral of the story is don't go hiking at 3 a.m.
There's no snakes. There's no snakes in our parts. But that I feel would be like a pretty shitty way to die, because it's just like because they could get you. You don't have to be paying attention, and they could get you. And it's like, oh, it's over now. Let the poison slowly take over. Of course, in Canada, or at least with us, we don't have to worry about any super venomous snakes. But different parts of the world,
I think
that's why.
Can I echo that a little bit? I think I think I would definitely not want to go by being eaten by any animal, which is sort of just to amplify what you said. Like, especially
mine is very specific. It's a snake only. Okay.
Pat, did you watch like the Nugget movie as a kid, and that kind of traumatized Kush? Like, we can go down a different.
I watched those all the time, man.
I've thought about this a lot, and it's just like it just seems like the most worst way, because you don't do anything. You're not a participant. But anyways, there's lots of ways to die. Like, that's the same thing. But
so, is there a specific snake?
No, I don't really know.
But like, look what happened to Spider-Man. He got bit by a spider. You could turn into.
Oh,
Snake
so you'll call me Supperman.
Reptile.
Reptilian. Yeah. Oh, he's playing the Nagini song now for us. Yeah. I mean, you guys may have seen my Nagini dance on the dance floor, but yeah. So, anyways, I just felt like I had to share that. Okay, moving on. And this one will be a little interesting, obviously. I think I know how you're going to answer, you guys. But what is more important to you guys, being truthful or happiness?
Who's going first? Me? You?
This is my answer. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll go then. Okay, I think being truthful.
Teacher, I don't know.
Being truthful, straight, boom, to the point.
Go on. Explain why, sir.
What was the opposite? Like, I don't think there is an opposite. I don't think there's an alternative.
I'm gonna tie this into the death question now. Then.
Sure.
So, okay. If the truth was you have to tell somebody that they have a certain amount of time to live, but you know that's gonna completely ruin their happiness, would you still tell them the truth?
Yeah, because isn't it going to be way more devastating than suddenly I'm gone?
But then they're not going to be happy. You've caused them so much harm.
At the end of the day, guys, in my personal opinion and my personal way that I am, I always straight up say how it is. I don't care. I also like to know. Like, if I'm going to be unhappy with an answer from somebody, I'd rather know the truth rather than the fakeness behind it. I don't believe happiness is and I'm going to go into a little rant here, but whatever, this is my personal opinion. I think we've all been trained to chase happiness. I think we've all been taught that happiness is where you need to be. But at the end of the day, I don't think happiness is where you need to be. I think happiness is one end of a spectrum, where the other end of the spectrum, and I think I've talked about this before, is sort of melancholy, like depression, right? Like extreme sadness. So you want this, which on a teeter-totter scale would be like this. You need to find the balance that's in the middle of them. And that is often called content, right? Being content with things, which is also, in my opinion, being true to the truth, being okay with how things are, period. And I think that's why, for me, truth trumps happiness, because happiness is still a very, to me, it's like, if I'm going to be happy all the time, that's not good for somebody. They have to experience ups and downs to balance themselves out, which therefore becomes truth, right? Or contentness. That's my personal opinion. So I'd rather have that and say it how it is. To even Malik, to answer your question, if I tell them, I have to tell them, because at least then I'm true to myself, right?
So what that triggers in my brain is then what do we define as happiness? Because if we try to find happiness in each day, and it's like, that's how I'm content, that is our happiness. If that's by telling the truth, that's how we find her. If we get the news that we only have a certain amount of time to live, we can still find the happiness. So I feel like happiness is such an abstract thing that it kind of goes hand in hand with truth.
Happiness, in my opinion, is a state of mind that is taught and projected to us by society, which, especially in a capitalist society, which is what we are trained to chase as humans, as children going to school. It's a state of mind that we're taught to be in, or a state of collectiveness amongst groups, society, to be a part of. Because everything that's not happy is labeled and taught as being not the right way to be, or negativity behind those non-happy things. Whereas, to be happy, exactly, like the question is, what is happiness? So how do you get there?
So I think like everybody's definition of happiness might be different. For you, like you're labeling it as like you said, your teeter-totter as like happiness and melancholy or sadness. But for somebody,
let's just be simple, happiness and sadness.
Sadness, right? But like for some people, like that middle point of being content is their happiness, not the top of the mountain of like ecstatic, overly happy. It's like, no, like in this moment right now, with what I have, with whatever's around me, I'm happy. Or like if something really bad happens.
And that's a mislabeling by society, in my opinion. So truly, are they happy, or they're good? Yeah. I think they're good, which means they're content.
Content, yeah.
Well, it's also interesting with the capitalist perspective, because happiness is tied to like achievements.
I'm also going to give you guys
materialistic goals, right? Like,
that's
graduated.
Continue. I'm going to show you guys something.
I've got like I've now making a 6-figure job, right? Like a lot of people tie those goals and those steps to happiness. Where I see like a lot of issues come up with happiness, and that disconnect happens.
I'll tell you something real quick. Like, go to any third world country where they don't know about these capitalist things.
Oh yeah.
And there's people living on the street, living in what we consider poverty, right? And they're happy, man. They're good.
That goes to my point, then, not your point. Your point was like, we're chasing after happiness, but like we can find happiness in whatever we want.
But that's really, if you
as look a Western capitalist society, though, like that's kind of what he prefaced with, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let me show you something. This is going to be something that might warp your brain, okay? Because we're taught
part-time with Patwant.
Yeah. So just to anyone who's listening on the audio, he's actually doing a drawing here.
I'm doing a drawing.
So make sure you head over to the YouTube channel and watch the video format of this.
Yeah, at this point.
All right. So I'm just gonna do a quick little mind sort of warp thing, right? So here you go. I drew a little like a number line. One side, I don't know if you're going to be able to see it. There you go.
Now we can.
One side you see sadness, one side you see happiness, and it's like a number line. Okay. Now, here's the thing. If you really want the truth based on a lot of different teachings of a lot of different sort of people around the world in history, not necessarily in this time. I know you can't always see it because of the light. I have a light up here. I'll turn it off just to help. So what if I did this and we take our linear thinking and turn it into a circle? Like, remember Pac-Man when you went through one side of the screen and came out the other?
Yeah.
So this is actually the truth. Because if you become so happy, you're not far from being somebody like Joker and going insane and then technically being depressed. Like, that's an opinion of my own. I'm not a psychologist or anything close to it. It's just my general thoughts. Okay, so that's what I think.
My brain is shattered.
I know. So my true opinion is happiness is not actually on the opposite end of the spectrum. It's somewhere over here. When you get over here, you get loony, like insanity, like that insane thought process like you see with Joker. Like the same thing with melancholiness on the other side. And then if you take those and you go like this with them, that's truly what you think. Flat earth people, take a look at this, right? So that's what happens. So the truth is actually, we all think our time is linear and dimensions are linear, and that's the
There's
problem.
so much more to it. Yeah,
I can go into so many metaphysics right here, but I'm not going to.
So you're saying if I go on the complete edge of happiness, I can be like the ShamWow guy. It's ShamWow!
Banana Wow, remember that?
I do, yeah.
Yeah.
That's an interesting theorem.
But yeah, it is. And that's also I have a lot of different theories like that, which are not just things I pulled out of my, they're things that I've sort of studied based on different
spin-off podcast coming up with just Pat sitting in a room with a tinfoil hat on.
Yeah.
No, man.
We're all tying tinfoil bugs.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, no, it's actually...
You have to answer this question too.
Yeah, you got to go
into happiness.
Yeah. Did you answer?
I guess my answer is still kind of like...
No, you got to say something, man.
Okay. Mine is truth as well. Like, that's without a doubt, it's truth. And the only reason it's just like... it's more so ties to like... faith as well as like self-respect and kind of integrity. So like those things kind of combined make truth like a really important thing for me.
Yeah.
I don't mind like if something is real and something is a bad situation, I feel like that's better to know than try to be like a little bit ignorant to a situation and be like, yeah, I'm happy. I don't know these things.
Yeah.
But they're like, I'm not gonna lie, there's points where I don't want to know the truth with a lot of things, because like mentally it's just like, I can't deal with this shit, right? Like it's just too much. So
what you're saying is that truth and happiness lay on a spectrum that's not linear.
Yeah, it could be very circular.
Yeah, circular. Yeah, that's the word.
That's the word. Yeah, so it's like it's interesting.
It's dependent, I think. Yeah.
Well, yeah, like you said, like what defines it as well. Obviously, of course, that's different for each person. But like knowing what's real, I think that's a lot more important because you can adjust how you deal with learning or taking in information, right? So if like you walk into the room and you're like, okay, this person is dead, right? Depending on my state of mind, I can shift my state of mind in order to adapt and prepare and kind of get in a mode that could even put me in neutral or even a positive position of thinking, which translates loosely into happiness, right?
So like technically, you're a realist.
Sure. Yeah. I don't know. I don't really care to define myself about anything, but like if you want to call me that, I don't mind.
Based off of that, you'd rather have reality, which is truth.
Yeah. So like that's kind of important because like happiness is a lot of people. I really understand why people want to go down that road, like from a mental health perspective, and like why it's really important to them. Yeah. But I just feel like there's you also like the reality is just way more in your face, and if like when you kind of don't accept reality and adapt to it, there's maybe just like more consequences that you face when you don't. So yeah.
So one more thing I want to add to this is like my little thing that I said earlier about what society is telling us is happiness. I think that it has become a lot more of a problem these days with social media and something I call the Instagram effect, which is what people model.
It's actually very well researched.
Yeah, and what people think happiness is literally what somebody is posting and I might post something. I might post a picture of my son, and me, my son, and my wife, right? I might post a picture of my family, and say, "Oh my God, best time ever!" Really, like my son's probably crying, and I'm finally like it took me an hour to get that picture, and he's just screaming, and I'm having now my concussion symptoms come back from when I had a concussion. Yes, I had a concussion, and now I can't think, and everything's jumbled.
So that's the social media effect. Like people aren't gonna post like I felt suicidal today or I felt really anxious today when I couldn't get out of bed. Like that's the social media effect. Everybody to an extent is portraying themselves online in a different way than it is.
Khushi, doesn't that come back to your point where somebody's like, "Hey, how are you today?" And you're like, "Oh, well." Oh, they don't actually care. No.
They don't.
Yeah,
right?
that's like the biggest farce in life, right? That question.
Yeah.
I just call that like just being kind of I don't
small talk
now.
And I don't personally like small talk.
Exchanging pleasantries, right? Like it's
acknowledging
just
somebody exists by making absolutely no logical conversation with them.
Yeah, so like I've never been even super huge into that. Of course, like I feel like you kind of it's just a way of the world, or at least our world here,
way of society.
Yeah.
So I mean, let me ask. So Malik, you have no answer to that, or you're just kind of like whatever?
I kind of agree with everything that's been kind of put out there. It's like it is a perspective. There is a spectrum of it, and there's really like depends on the situation.
Yeah, I think generally, I mean,
truth has a little bit more weight, but you can also find happiness with
more real than happiness. I think happiness can be defined in moments opposed to generalness.
I agree.
Right?
I agree.
Happiness you get in moments just as sadness, right? I think, but in generally, what's unfolding when you're sitting on the couch watching TV around you, maybe not in your head, is just what things are, which is the truth, which is reality, right? So exactly, that's Malik wrote in the chat, so at the end of the day, the truth can hurt, but the truth is what is and what you're going to have to live with later. But shout out to Lember Hussain Puri. And here's one more question for you guys before we cut the show. What do you guys think?
Let's do it.
Is the year really 2021?
I don't know. I didn't make the calendar or do any studying into it. I just lived this life as I've been told, because I am a puppet and a sheep.
Check us out on all platforms for podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. We're on all of them. Comment your thoughts below, guys. Malik, what's our social media? And let's wrap it up. And actually tell me what year you guys think it truly is.
I don't know. I don't have my tinfoil hat on yet, so I'll go find that and then I'll answer the question later. But you can find us on Instagram and Twitter at Pardesi_Beats. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and also share the video with your friends. Pardesi Beats is back and better than ever.
Whoa, are one of you guys vaccinated? My 5G signal is amazing.